Hi, welcome to Conversations and Cocktails. Today's guest is Valerie Mae Wright, and she is going to educate us on cannabis just a little bit. If you like this video, please follow me. Ciao! Hi, and welcome to Conversations and Cocktails. Today's guest is Valerie Mae Wright. Yes, Valerie is my BFF. And we have known each other for 22 years, we figured out. Yeah. We'll tell you that story in a minute. First, let's get on to the drink. We are having iced chamomile tea. And today, instead of a cocktail, because Valerie doesn't choose cocktails, we are having cannabis, which is right up Valerie's alley because that is her passion. So, this is Zoots. She's from the East Coast. First time she's ever seen Zoots. We got this, I think, at Ganja Goddess or something like that. It was so good. They took great care. They took great care of you.
Yes, they did.
And you know what great care is because you have a store.
That's right.
Yes. Okay, it says 1
Ooh, it's thick.
dropper full. So this is Val's first time having Zoots. And this is our first time having cannabis on Conversations and Cocktails. So here's, I'll give you a little squirt because you've got a higher tolerance. There we go. And then we're gonna cheers in just a sec. Okay, you ready?
Chamomile tea.
There we are. My lipstick already on there. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cannabis and conversations. Conversations and cannabis.
Delicious.
Good with iced chamomile tea. Okay, so Valerie and I have known each other, as we said, 22 years. We were, so I was at a community college in Shoreline. I was the student body president, and Valerie was president of the Model Arab League, captain of the women's soccer, and you ran a
Women's group at the Women's Center.
At the Women's Center. And you also dated on the student body, because I was president, you dated
Treasurer.
the treasurer. So we spent a bunch of time together, and then not only that, because of our leadership positions at this college, they sent us to Georgetown University for a Women in Leadership conference. And so we were friends, or friendly, but that weekend, Friday, I got divorced, and then we got on a plane. And so you had me all weekend after my divorce. The weekend after my divorce. Yes. And we have been like that ever since. I don't think there's any secrets that she doesn't know. So.
And likewise.
Yes. So when I first met you, the only time I met you, the beginning of our love affair, you were, again, like we talked about, president of the Model Arab League. You were in the military. You were like super high secret. Your trajectory was very different than where it ended. So you started with, what would you say? You spoke 5 languages. When I met you, you spoke 5 languages, which I was always just like, oh, I wish. So your native tongue from the reservation, English, German, Farsi, and Arabic. Is that right? Or is there more? Spanish.
English, just a touch of Spanish, German, Arabic, and I know little Lakota.
Yeah. And then no Farsi? Because I was
no
pretty
Farsi.
Sure.
It's related to Arabic,
Okay.
but it's from the Middle East, but it's different. I just knew a couple of words, but I learned that as I went along. But I definitely never picked it up.
Okay. And then masalama. Why we used to always greet each other masalama.
Salamu alaikum.
Okay.
It means peace be upon you.
Okay.
And then ma salama is goodbye, go with peace.
Okay, that must be why. Then I
with
guess we
peace,
were saying
literally,
goodbye.
it means with peace.
Okay.
So ma salama.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then what else am I thinking? Okay, so you went along the route of government work for a while, and then there was a point where you said, yeah, I'm ready to have a family, and you took a completely left turn and became an herbal medicine doctor. And you actually even have a master's in herbal medicine, which I don't even think do they have programs anymore?
It was the only one in the country. Actually, at the time, the only one in the world. There was another one in England that was shut down. It had closed just as I was taking my graduate degree in Maryland. It's Master's of Science in Herbal Medicine And my cohort was the last to go through that. It's since changed and taken a big hunk of the science, nutrition, and clinical pieces out, and now it's a Master's of Science in Therapeutic Herbalism.
Okay.
Yeah, they still have a clinical track, and then there's a whole separate nutrition program, but it's no longer the same as it was, which was like 3 credits short of a PhD. It was intense. It's a lot. Yeah, it was like a 3-year master's degree program.
Yeah. And so Val and I would talk like every day.
Yeah.
Just forever, except for when she disappeared that one time. But then, since you've been back, pretty much we've talked every day. And it was where we would be stuck on the wall phone, and then so exciting when we got cell phones where we would laugh because we could actually leave the house and talk to each other.
Yeah.
And now we FaceTime every day.
It's amazing. And the video chat, Marco Polo.
Yeah, and Marco Polo.
So we can leave each other video messages. I feel like I'm on the Jetsons.
Yeah. Totally on the
crazy.
Jetsons.
Yeah.
Totally on the Jetsons.
Some of your current watchers might not even know what the Jetsons are.
Oh, that could be. Okay, so back to your passion and career, because we haven't even actually gotten to where you ended up. And so I want people to know, like, what you did with all that information. So you've got your master's in herbal medicine. You started a nutrition business.
I had a private practice, and it was nutrition and herbal medicine, and I would see clients at 3 different locations in Maryland, and did that for a couple of years. And I also taught at the university. I started teaching predominantly Native American medicine, and then I taught medicine making and went on to administer the program as it was on its way out the door. Actually, there were a couple of programs after me. I administered a certificate in herbal medicine at that graduate school that's still going on now. So. And as I was doing that, as I was doing herbal medicine, actually shortly after I got married, my mom was diagnosed with cancer. And my dad had MS. And so I did a lot of research learning about my herbal medicine and everything. At that time, I was still in the government and military, but then really went in wanting to come full circle. I grew up in the country, messing around with a lot of plants, eating from the yard every day. In the summertime, and then started teaching herbal medicine and learning about cannabis. And neither my mom or my dad were willing to use cannabis, partially because it was illegal, and it still is federally. And so we had no cannabis, institutionalized cannabis that was medicalized or legalized in the East Coast at the time, but started advocating for cannabis, because I realized that it was such a good medicine for people, but they were afraid to use it because they're afraid to lose their jobs. They were more afraid to lose their jobs than their lives at the time. It was crazy.
Right. And so you were one of the people, the witnesses, that would go in with the lobbyists and advocate for cannabis use in Baltimore, right?
Yes,
Maryland.
my partner and I at the time started Maryland Americans for Safe Access, Maryland NORML, which is the National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws, and we started the Maryland Cannabis Policy Coalition, which is now run by the ACLU and the MPP, the Marijuana Policy Project. And those are all national organizations, but then they have state chapters. So we revitalized those state chapters, and then we created the Maryland Cannabis Policy Coalition, because what we saw at these cannabis conferences, I started really diving deep into cannabis, going to conferences across the nation, where I saw you as well. You helped me with childcare. We met up, and you would go to these conferences with me, some herbal medicine conferences and then some that were cannabis focused. Right. Is that there were all of these groups, these disparate groups that were all doing really similar work, but they weren't really working together. And so in Maryland, we wanted to go deep and make changes. So we created this coalition where we brought all of these groups together and made some change. We got cannabis decriminalized in Maryland with the laws that were started at our kitchen table with a really great lobbyist by the name of Dan Formansky. He helped gay marriage get passed in Maryland.
Nice.
So a mutual friend introduced us, and he really ran that coalition. I just get goosebumps whenever I think about it. He just did an amazing job, and in a short time, we got decriminalization in 1 year, and then the next year we got a medical law. It really wasn't an enactable law. We needed to make some changes to the laws, so people who were much smarter than me in law writing and lobbying and policy making worked with people like Dan to make that happen. And I just showed up and testified on behalf of my patients, on behalf of, my colleagues who had patients who needed to use cannabis, on behalf of all the firefighters and other patients I had in my office who had inflammatory disorders or glaucoma or some strange, symptom that would show up that wasn't being treatable, or they had side effects to conventional medicine. I'm not anti-conventional medicine, but it's a great marriage. We've co-evolved with plants for eons, and pharmaceuticals are relatively recent, invention, and so we have more reactions to them. Plus, they target specific areas in the body, whereas you can't really do that with plants. So I like to think of cannabis as a smart drug. It has an affinity for where it's needed in the body. And so learning that just helped me really want to stand up for this plant and for the people who needed it, myself included.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. I have loved following as your, by your side, as your friend, like your change in direction, government work to cannabis advocate. And not only are you a cannabis advocate and educated very well, and you keep yourself educated, you have a dispensary that you're in charge of.
Yes, Mission Dispensaries. It's a growing national brand, and it's headquartered in Arizona, but we have dispensaries in Massachusetts, retail and medical, in Chicago, the Chicago area, in Illinois, medical dispensary in Pennsylvania, Allentown medical dispensary, and in Maryland, and actually are partnering with a bunch of other smaller dispensaries who need support and growth across the nation. And our parent company, who we're partnered with, was started by some fierce drug policy advocates as well. Chris Crane is the founder of Students for Sensible Drug Policy, which is across campuses across the nation, actually across the world now, and looking at, drug reform. So he co-founded Forefront Ventures, and out of that was born the Mission model, which is the Mission dispensary brand. And also we've partnered recently with Cannex, which is a Canadian and American company that is largely here on the West Coast in Seattle. They have a lot of grow operations, cultivation, processing, and some dispensaries across the West Coast.
And that's what you brought you to Seattle.
Yes.
Thank you, Cannex, for bringing my BFF to Seattle.
Thank
Or
you.
Mission.
And Mission, yes. We're having a general manager's workshop here starting tomorrow, actually.
Nice.
And so that's really exciting. So I helped manage a dispensary down in Silver Spring area in Maryland, and now just recently I'm the general manager of one that we've opened up in the Baltimore area in Hamden.
Nice.
So it's really exciting and challenging, and a dream come true.
Nice. Okay, so now with every great story, there is usually like kind of some stumbling blocks along the way. And so as you started your journey, you left government, you went into herbal medicine, and then you found yourself on this cannabis journey as a medication that really, like you said, targets one spot. It's kind of a miracle medicine. What have been your roadblocks getting from your beginnings to now you're running your own store?
Well, I would say, cannabis is a big industry, and really to make a big splash and do well, it requires a lot of resources, and it requires a lot of connections. And so that's always a potential roadblock. And so partnering with the right partners. I had advocated for a long time in medical cannabis, and taught herbal medicine, and had this corporate government military background, so I was a good opportunity for a lot of applicants to want to partner with. So I was courted by a lot of applicants as we were going along through the medical process of getting these laws passed. People who wanted us to be on their team of board of advisors or taking a more active role. And I think really choosing your partners wisely is the most important way to avoid a lot of those roadblocks, because we have our roadblocks, but as we're growing as a brand, the biggest roadblock is really knowing your laws. Like, we are in the cannabis industry, but more than that, we're in the compliance industry, because we're working with state regulatory agencies and bodies, everything from local licensing and zoning boards to the state level. The state commission can come into my dispensary, and has, at the drop of a hat, and does a drop inspection, just a spot inspection. They will stay there as long as they like and ask to see anything that they want, to pull your cameras, and just really learning to cooperate well with those regulatory bodies, understanding what laws you need to be compliant with and what the laws are helps you get them the answers they need, and helps get past those stumbling blocks. We have had in Massachusetts, dispensary be closed from time to time just because there's more information needed by that state commission or whatever regulatory body there is. So I think working with those regulatory bodies is probably the biggest roadblock, and also a roadblock for our patients. It's a way for our patients to access the medicine, but it's also, when we're still in a medical state like Maryland, there is potentially, an access issue when it costs $200 to see a doctor to get your cannabis recommendation. And initially we wrote the laws so that there was no medical card required to get a cannabis card. And now this last year, the state has mandated that there will be a card required, for all patients, and that's another $50 fee for patients, to have to come up with. So I think it is, it does block access a little bit to the medicine, and that is something that we're trying to get past. That's something, a good reason to go towards an adult use state and condition like Washington has, because there's more access to the medicine.
I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I hope that you'll be able to follow Washington and Denver and the other recreational, recreational states. So now that totally helps me understand kind of the roadblocks that you've had to have becoming a company. Now I'm curious about your own personal journey, like you talked about really getting, before you even left government work, and watching your pops with MS and your mother get cancer, and with your curiosity about medicines, and you've always been a great eater, and going into cannabis as a personal journey, which you brought into a professional journey. Like how did you navigate, and where did you decide, and where you really had to kind of go the extra effort, and maybe there was some discrimination that you had to go up against or something along those lines? Like, where were those roadblocks for you
So my own personal relationship with cannabis?
Oh, no,
As a
we don't have to
medicine?
get that into it. No, just going from that curious place to a professional, like in your educational background, and because I understand how the roadblocks came up with your licensing and such.
Right.
But I'm just talking about you as a woman on a journey with a medicine that you believe so strongly in. And well, even let me ask you this. Maybe this will help. We'll incorporate the two because this will be part of it. As a woman, and from your own personal cultural background, your family of origin, how has that helped you or hurt you in your field? So maybe that'll help.
Cannabis is one of the fastest growing women-led industries in the world. And so at the top, though, there is still the white male generally at the front of the majority of cannabis companies. And I'd like to see that changing. I do think it is changing. Predominantly Caucasian appearing females also tend to be the next lead at these cannabis companies. And so, I'm a Caucasian appearing female. Definitely have seen, some typical patriarchal norms, just like any other corporate structure. And just in working with, the networking and everything in a growing industry, there is sort of that still male-dominated corporate background that is present. But I think that's just a daily dance that I do as a woman in this world, is navigating what that looks like and how I'm going to change how I show up in the world. And I think some of my own personal work, with going to Mama Gina's School of the Womanly Arts, which you introduced me to this past year, as I was going through a lot of, personal growth myself and personal transformation and transition myself. It's been interesting to be on this journey simultaneously. It's like, I've grown so much going in and doing deep spiritual and physical work and, therapeutic work on my past. but also this plant. You know, we're going through like a freedom, a liberation of this plant. So it's super exciting. I never think, I mean, I am not a black man who has been put in jail for this plant, you know, and were I might not have the platform that I have. So although I'm a female, I just know the type of people that have really suffered from drug laws and from cannabis laws and from simple possession, you know, Caucasian men and black men in Maryland. This is the report that the ACLU put out our first year of the Maryland Cannabis Policy Coalition. It was called Cannabis in Black and White, and it made the national news. And it says that, you know, cannabis use is self-professed by white males and black males the same amount, slightly more by Caucasian males. They use it, they admit to using it slightly more. And black men are 3 times as likely at the time of this report to be put in prison for simple possession of cannabis. And that's obviously just, you know, another way to profile people. So I guess I just don't even think of myself as having roadblocks because I know what real roadblocks look like. And although we've had them not being Caucasian males, I'm not a black man or a black woman in Baltimore, and I live in Baltimore, and I know what that looks like. And so I still know I have an incredible amount of privilege. And so I try to use that privilege as in the most humble, happy, and hardworking way as possible, which is our missions. Like what we look for in people when we're hiring at Mission is happy, humble, hardworking people, because that's who we are. We're just people connecting, and we're in this time of a release of prohibition. You know, it's interesting. It's fascinating. Antibition, the ending of prohibition. Yeah.
So did you ever get your mother and your pops to use cannabis?
No, my pops passed away on 4/20, actually, just this past April, and he was diagnosed with cancer 10 days before he died. And he used cannabis maybe, you know, in high school, but never used it since. He was a machinist and a welder for a long period of time. I have no doubt that's how he contracted MS, but other people might disagree. My mom was a bus driver for a long time, and so had a professional commercial license, so would never use cannabis. I asked her recently when I was home, because I've been diagnosed with glaucoma, and they're watching a lot of people in my family because we have this unique early onset of glaucoma potential, and I have celiac disease, an allergy to gluten, so the cannabis really helps me with both of those things. And so I've come out of the closet. You know, I first was introduced to it back when I was living in Seattle, when we were friends, and just as a medicine for menstrual cramps, and only used it as such for a long period of time until I, you know, didn't use alcohol or caffeine anymore, and found that it was a lovely social, you know, relaxant as well. And peace plant, something that sort of brings people together, and it stimulates more conversation, and which can lead to more collaboration in the end. So my mom saw me, you know, really in the last year. She witnessed me using cannabis. You know, I would eat a cannabis chocolate or something like that, because I don't, you know, inhale it around or anything like that, but I use it every day for glaucoma to control the pressure in my eyes. So I asked her, I was like, would you ever want, you know, to try cannabis one day? And she said, no, you know, I don't think so, because you know, I've been fine without it so far. So that was her answer. But more and more friends and family members are opening to this medicine, and just as a gentler way to communicate and collaborate and relax as well. So it's self-medication in an asymptomatic way.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Can you see, like, why she's my best friend?
Why she's my best friend.
Beautiful and intelligent. And you actually did a lot of teaching when I broke my kneecap in half. You taught me a lot about cannabis and the fats and the cannabinoid receptors, because I was very anti-cannabis until, of course, they got me on narcotics for a long time. And then, you know, cannabis is like, let me choose that over that. That was awful.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And that's amazing too, what cannabis is doing to help, you know, bring opioid addiction rates down and opioid overdose rates down. I think that in some things like the Narcan, that people are getting Narcan training. But cannabis, we see a lot of people come into dispensaries who are on pain management, coming from pain management docs, we're wanting to change the relationship to pain medication. And it's great. It's helping people, just really cut their doses in half and live a more productive, anti-inflammatory and pain-free life. So it's great.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate it.
It's been
I
a
love
pleasure.
you so much. Okay, so this is the end, and this is when you get to tell them how they can find you. But I don't know, because you're from the East Coast, it's not like we can say, hey, people in Seattle, come down and check out Mission.
You can check out Mission dispensaries. They are coming across the nation,
there you
and I'm in Baltimore for now. Yeah,
For now.
that's right. So let's see. My website is the number 7, the word Gen Medicine, 7genmedicine.com.
And you do nutrition stuff
I do
are you doing
nutrition
that?
and herbal medicine, but right now I'm not taking any
You're not
clients
taking any
because I'm
clients.
just really busy with cannabis. But I do have a huge network of amazing nutritionists and herbal medicine practitioners and acupuncturists, so I can refer people to.
Perfect. And I think there's a couple in Seattle, actually, that you could refer.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yep. So, okay, well, thank you. I love you. And let's,
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
I feel so relaxed with cannabis and chamomile and conversations with my best friend.
Cheers.
Cheers. I love you.